You're live, Christos.
Okay, what's up, everyone? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I didn't get a cue that we're live, so there you go. We are live on MSLN, and it's Global Azure, and I'm really excited to be here. And I'm not alone. I have my very good friend, Clifford Agus, all the way from the UK, although he's actually in the US today doing this. You are in a hotel room.
I'm in a hotel room in Dallas.
It's commitment.
Well, you know, it was last minute you asked that we agreed to do this together. So yeah, and my roster had me flying to Dallas, so I'm here.
It's the stars aligning for this session, and it wasn't last minute. We had a whole week to prepare for this.
yeah. So quickly writing up. Yeah.
Write all the demos, get all the decks, and walk through the process. But it is exciting to be here, and let's switch the slides so we can actually show people some stuff before we even jump into the demos. And we promise there's not going to be lots of slides.
Yeah, we want Christos is share, I think.
I am sharing, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
There we go.
We got it. It is a live session after all, so mistakes will happen. Trust us. We're here to make the mistakes. So it's me and my very good friend Clifford. Clifford, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
Me, well, as the slide shows there, you can find me on Twitter and my blog. When I'm not writing code, you'll find me at 40,000 feet, doing about 600 miles an hour, flying a Boeing 787 around the world for a major UK airline. So I'm an airline pilot by day and Xamarin IoT dev by night, and all the other spare time around family time. Microsoft MVP, I'm based in London. At the moment, I'm sitting in a hotel room in Dallas, Fort Worth, because I flew across yesterday and I get to fly home tonight, weather permitting. We'll get out of Dallas with no issues, and yeah, fly home overnight. And yeah, that's me. Reach out to me on Twitter or find my blog post as well.
Yeah, we were planning on making that session live from the plane, but Clifford could not line up the flight, mid-flight, and the session. So unfortunately,
I can't fly and give a session at the same time.
It's not. You know, I thought it was just an autopilot, and these days you just sit there to make sure that you press right.
Yeah. We do have the autopilot. No, inflates in the seat, but yeah, just like in the airplane movies. But yeah, no, it's we do have to actually work when we're sitting up the front.
And I'm just kidding. Safety first. We will never do code while we fly. Like we don't do code while we drive. Okay. And me, I work as a program manager at Microsoft for the Microsoft Identity team. And I'm extremely passionate about identity. And I hope to inspire developers to build better and more secure software. That's the whole point of this session, by the way. It's all about secretless apps. So I will let Clifford. Oh, no, this one. If you like what you see today, if you are interested in identity, then we have a fantastic show that takes place on Twitch, and we're on YouTube as well. You can find us at Twitch /45 show or aka.ms45 show, and we talk about all the identity scenarios end to end. So if you're building Blazor and you want to know how to secure your access to your Blazor apps, we're going to call some Azure resources as well, and we'll show you how to do that. We do Node, we do Go, we do Python, anything that has to do with identity. It's a fair game. And then we have on Wednesday, we have an IT Pro kind of section where we focus more on the IT management of your Azure AD tenants. For example, yesterday we showed how to go passwordless. So lots of less, passwordless, secretless. Try to eliminate the risks of your credentials or sensitive information falling in their own hands. But passwordless with YubiKeys, and we gave away some YubiKeys as well to our audience. But it was exciting from a developer perspective, seeing that just flicking a switch somewhere in Azure AD, I could benefit from all the goodness that comes from passwordless apps. So make sure to join us, follow us on the 45 show on Twitch, join us on Discord as well. Reach out if you have any questions. And we're on Twitter as well all the time, so you can harass us there too. So, Clifford.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about today is a Xamarin app that we've put together quite quickly in less than a week. And the idea of this is to show that what you don't want to do when you're developing an app is obviously, you do your git commit and accidentally push up, your keys and your secret keys up to GitHub or wherever you're storing your code, and then it's those keys are out there. So you want to make sure that it's still secure. Also, when you push the app out to the stores and it gets loaded people's phones. You don't want those keys to be part of the app, because if someone engineers the app, you don't want the keys to be in there, and then they can access and abuse your Azure resources. So it's, we're going to show that you can use your own tools, services, platforms. So we're going to talk about Xamarin today. But with identity, as Christos will know more than I do, but you can bring all your own tools. So it does, the Microsoft Identity Platform doesn't necessarily have to be Azure, C#. You can bring your own language. You can write in Python, in JavaScript. You can bring your own IDE. Doesn't necessarily have to be Visual Studio, and then you can use your own kind of cloud platforms as well. So it's bring what you've got and use what you know and love. You don't necessarily have to stick with Microsoft and the tools that Microsoft give out, which are all free anyway. So I don't know why you wouldn't use them. Why wouldn't you use them?
It's all free anyway, right? Why would you not use it? That's a great question. I think I've done too far. Right. But if you are on the Microsoft platform, as Clifford said, there are so many more added benefits with regards to identity. And today's demo is actually going to focus a lot on this kind of deep end-to-end integration. Now, we don't care what language you're running your solutions at. It could be JavaScript, it could be .NET, like we're doing today. It could be Java, it could be Python. The capabilities that we'll be showing today apply to most of the major languages that we support. And a major component of these things is built on top of the Azure SDK. So the Azure SDKs benefit from the Microsoft Identity Platform. And even though we may not be using, the sign in, sign out, the authentication component of the Microsoft Identity Platform throughout the demo, we will use it to begin with. A lot of things are underpinned by Microsoft Identity. Something that we will be covering later on will be the Microsoft Identity, the managed identities that are available to you when you're running on Azure. Or is it just Azure? We'll see. The whole point there, though, is that with managed identities, I can eliminate the need for secrets. And you might say, well, why is it so big? Why is it so important? Well, there are quite a few stories out there, and every week we see some other company making the news. In fact, it was like a month ago when an Indonesian company made the news for storing customer data, financial data in an insecure storage account on Azure. Now, lots of things are at fault there, but by default, when you spin up a new storage account now, I think it goes into private. And then when you need to connect to that, if you're using the right approach, like we're going to show you today, you don't even need to have any secrets or credentials stored anywhere. And you're not going to make the news for the wrong reasons. We want you to make the news for the good reasons, like growth, success, and what have you. And credentials are a big issue in our industry. These days, there's no chance that you will have an app that just has a web app. I mean, you could have just a web app, but most of the times you have to connect to some database or some storage account or some other resources, even on-prem APIs. You want that communication to be secure. And in most cases, that communication gets secure via HTTPS and then some private key, some code that allows you to securely prove that you have access to that. Now, let's take the example of storage or some other resource. But if you are connecting to a storage account, there are ways to authenticate against it. One of them is having the storage keys. So you have a primary and secondary storage key. And if you are instantiating a storage client for your code, no matter the language, you need to pass some credentials to say, I'm going to use this specific storage account, some URL, with that key or these credentials. Me and you as a developer might think, well, there's no harm there. I'll just put it in my code. I can put in an environment variable. I can put in my secrets file for my .NET solution or some other approach. But there are challenges with that. First of all, in a large organization or a large company, imagine so many developers around the company managing secrets or having access to secrets. It's not so good, especially for production environments. And I've been in many situations where developers would have access to production systems and things happen. Like, I've seen people deleting production databases by accident. I've seen people deleting data from production databases because they thought they were connecting to their dev environment. I've seen people accidentally accessing data that they shouldn't have access to. So companies have liability. Developers now become liable as well on how they store things. And you don't want that risk. So there are ways to work around that, especially in the Microsoft Identity Platform, where you can develop locally against some system somewhere remote without any credentials, and then doing the same going in production without having to change the code. That's very important. We don't want people to be changing the code going from one environment to another, because that becomes a challenge again, and you have to scope that into your CI/CD. Therefore, our goal is for you to write secure software, not to get secrets leaking into source control, into some forgotten files, or even being used as an attack vector. Many attacks these days happen through social engineering, or not by brute forcing a system, but by working around the limitations and finding access to some source control credentials, or some file that has some secrets, or some post-it note that was left around with some key information. And I know Clifford's laughing over there, but it's happening. Like, people will put post-its to remember where their keys are. So is there a way to eliminate that and make it securely? Let's see. I mean, that's the whole point. So we'll start with Clifford showing us his app.
Yeah, I thought also to add to that, Christoph, as well, is for me, it's a case of I'm a developer that I do mobile and IoT. I'm not a security expert, so I can't think and worry about that, because otherwise I'd be not that I've got any hair, but I'd be pulling it out to worry about the security. Is my app secure? Is my devices secure? Whereas if I rely on the fact that Microsoft have got a whole team, hundreds, if not thousands, of people that work on the identity team in Azure, AD and B2C, etc., that it's their job. They get paid to worry about security. Let them worry about it. Let them think about that, and you can just be on with actually making your app as awesome as it needs to be, and just let someone else who knows what they're doing worry about security. So hopefully we'll show you how all that works today. So if we go across to my screen share, I'll quickly show off my my app. Here we go. So I'm in Visual Studio VS19, and I've thrown together an app. We call it Volcano Finder, and we're just using some demo data to show off a very simple app. Now this app is using Xamarin Forms, so it's out the box. I've just done File New Project and changed it to Volcano Finder, and this is using Xamarin Forms Shell. Now, anyone that's used Xamarin Forms in the last year or so will probably know about Shell, but before that, you had to worry about the navigation stack. You had to worry about how you get from one page to the next, worry about the back button, etc., etc. And there's a bit of it wasn't difficult, but there's a lot of boilerplate code, and it just seemed stupid. It was having to write that all the time. So the team come up with Shell, which allows you to develop that, and it's made the navigation stack really easy, to the point where this bit here is the whole app. So we've got 2 pages, an about page and a volcanoes page, and it takes you to the correct page. Job done. No need to more worry about it. In my models, I've got a volcano model which gives some details about the volcano, and then in my mock data store, I've got I'm creating a new list of volcanoes, and I've just got 2 volcanoes in there which are hard coded. And this is where you typically start with a project. You'd have a mock data store, and the reason you want to mock it out is so you can dependency inject it. That way you can write tests against it. Like a good developer, I've not written a test yet. I'll come back to those later, and I'll make the app work, and then I'll write the test suite later, because that's how we do things. That's how we roll. And then
I have a nice poster that says, I don't test my code, but when I do test my code, I test in production.
Yeah,
please don't be me.
Yeah, but we had a week to throw this together, and I didn't. Obviously, I've done some flying and other work as well, so I didn't have time to put the test in. You don't want to see test suite anyway. It's all green ticks, trust me. Then here we just got the normal POCO stuff. You got add, update, delete, get items, and get items async. And this is all this is doing is calling against this local list of volcanoes, which is instantiated when we use the mock data store. If we go into our the start of the app, which is the app.xaml.cs. You can see here that I'm dependency injecting the mock data store. We'll come on to the auth service in a little bit, but I'm just dependency injecting the mock data store there. You'll notice down in the bottom here, I've got an Android, iOS, and the UWP head. Being Xamarin, I've written the project once in the core here, and it targets Android, iOS, UWP. I've written no code in these projects for the base app. There's a little bit in there for the auth, which I'll come on to later, but nothing has been added to these projects. No pictures, no images, no fonts, nothing. It is, they are left as is to make them work. So if we take a quick look at the UWP version, just because that boots up nice and quickly. You can see here it's boosted on my laptop, and it will start momentarily, and will come in any second now. Come on, computer. There we go. We boot into, like I said, this is the bog standards Xamarin Forms shells. It comes into an about page. You can click on the learn more and take you out to aka.ms Xamarin Quick Start, where you can learn all about Xamarin Developer. Being a Xamarin developer, which means you can target iOS, Android, UWP, Mac OS, all those sorts of things, even Linux and Tizen, which is the Samsung, stuff so you can make apps that go on your fridge. But you can learn all about it there. All you need to do is have Visual Studio, VS Code, VS for Mac, and you can learn about being a developer there, and just a bit of .NET skill. But we're not here to do that. We're looking at a volcano. So we'll go across the volcanoes page. You can see I've got a nice little image here, which is part of the shared project. And I've got my two volcanoes, Abu in Japan and Amarachi in Chile. I go through to that, and I've just got the details of that volcano, where it is, its region, its elevation, what type, and etc. And then I've got see location on map. So if I click this, it will take me out to the maps, and it will position the map so that I can then see where that is. This is the one in Japan, so you can see where that is in Japan. And I think my data connection is struggling now. So you can see there, and this literally location on the map is just using Xamarin Forms Essentials to do a call out. So I've not had to edit each of the different projects and call out. So on Windows, it's going to call out to Bing Maps. On iOS, it's going to call out to Apple Maps. On Google, it call out to Google Maps. So this is all as it's working now. If I show the Android version, so I can just switch to Android at the top here. You can see it goes across to my Samsung device, which is sitting on my desk in front of me. And then I can do this, bring up Visor, which is what I use to screen share the app. And we can let this load up. Should take a few seconds to load up. And then what we'll do is we'll just quickly show the extra bits that are going on in here. Now, while that's loading up, I'll just come back to this mock auth service. And if we go into the mock auth service, all I'm doing here is to get it to work, I'm just instantiating a new identity client and just filling it in with a load of mock data. Now, if you go into this here, you'll see that it says in bold there, it says app developers should never new up Microsoft identity. But why have I going to nude that up? Well, the reason I'm going to nude that up is because I'm doing it as a mock auth service. So I'm just nuding it up just to create a mock auth result so that I can then call in to my app and do the sign in. And then the sign out just sets those both to null. So that's all my mock service is doing. So this is now started up. It's gone into the volcanoes page again, and we go in here, and we've got our two. I can actually use the phone for doing this. We go into the Amarachi and etc. And then we've also got at the top there, we've got an add button, so we can add in there a volcano name. So we can stick in there Kayla, which is in the USA because it's in East Maui, and anyone knows anything about Maui and Xamarin. Maui is multi-platform app UI, which is the evolution of Xamarin Forms with .NET 6, which is coming out in November. So its Xamarin name is being, say, retired, and Maui is coming into the .NET namespace. So it's going to be system.maui. So it's going to be fully baked into the .NET namespace, which is kind of cool. The framework, yeah. So So which means you can now say, I can't spell shield, but we'll get to that later. Unknown, and we won't worry about when it erupted last. But its latitude is 20.71 and its longitude is 156.25.
Did you memorize all these things? Because I'm
no,
scared
I've got them written down next to me. The interesting thing, though, the interesting thing is the fact that in the JSON packet that's sent across, you do longitude and latitude. But for me as an airline pilot, everything is done as lat and long. So when I first did this, I had them back to front. I was like, what is going on? Then I realized, like, hold on, minus 156. I was like, well, that's east, that's wrong, it's back to front. But yeah, so now we can go into our new one and we can look up, you can see it brings up Google Maps. And
that is insane. We put this in 1 week, by the way, or you put this in 1 week, less than 1 week.
That's one line of code that does that. In Zone Informs Essentials. So you can see where that is. It's on the Maui Islands. So you can see that I wanted to make sure I get in the Maui. You can see there that's opened up the on-device Google Maps. I'll click the back button on the device. It takes you back into the app. So that is, it's pretty impressive. But this isn't saved anywhere. It's saved locally on the device. So I restart this app, that will disappear. That Halakala will disappear. We want to obviously connect to the cloud and bring down a list that we've got stored up in Cosmos DB. So we want to make sure that we do this. So first we need to log in. So if we just stop this here and go back to our app shell, the easiest way to add a login page is literally to add a login. So if we do a shell content, and then we do a content templates, and we do data templates, and then we do login page, because that's the one I've got. And we give it a root of login, and we'll explain why that is later. That's it. That's all I need to do.
Nice.
What that's going to do is when the app boots, it's going to come into here, and the first thing it hits is the login page, which is this one here, and it's going to call out to our login page. Then we go to our views. We've got a login page, which is fairly simple. It's got an image and a logo, and then there's a big login command here. There's a button. We go out to our view models, and there's a login there, and it calls into login clicks. I'm just going to stop it doing that for the moment, which is going to call out to our sign-in async. But at the moment, don't forget, we've still got our mock auth service, so it's going to call out to that and get back an auth result because we faked it. And then it's going to go shell the current, go to async main, and that main, if we go back to our app shell, you'll see that the tab bar main is this root here. So it's just like roots, as in you'd use in your ASP.NET's kind of routing structure application. And then main, and then the first one in there is about, the second one is volcanoes, which is why when we had the app up, we had it started off in the about page. You swap those around and start off in the volcano page. Nice. So now we run this app again, and we let that build and run. We'll see that that will start up, and we can go into our app. And if I actually show the app, there you go. We'll see now that all I've done is added this shell content here, and it will bring up a login page. So we've got, like I say, another picture, and these images are part of the shared project. So they're in the images folder, which is up here. So you can see the images up there, and then we use a NuGet plugin called resize.nt, which comes in, and then it resizes these images correctly during the build and puts them in the respective projects, so in the iOS, Android, and UWP project, such that they are correctly sized for each device. So if you've done any Android development, you need to make like umpteen million different variants of the app for all the different sizes of Android phone and tablet. Resize.nt does that for you. It's fantastic and awesome. That's being brought into Xamarin.Maui as part of the new toolings, which means that you don't even have to bring in the NuGet yeah, it's going to be part of Maui, which is amazing and fantastic. So if we click the login, it goes out to that fake mock auth service and logs me in, and then I can go back in and I'm back in the app. But now, obviously, we want to actually log into a real service. So I just want to also show that's the other cool thing that we have here. I've got my iPhone in front of me. If I go out to turn on my iPhone, this is my iPhone that is in my hands. The other thing I've got now, I'm using a Windows laptop, a Surface Book 3, and there is no Mac here. There's probably one in the hotel somewhere, but I obviously can't connect to it. So this is using a part of the Visual Studio tooling called Hot Restart. So you can see there, I've now got, and all I've got is a cable, a normal cable, the power cable that connects my iPhone to my laptop. So it's plugged into USB ports, and I can run this app now, and it will go out to build that, and it publishes it out to my iPhone, and I can run it on my iPhone, and it should all work. So it's just doing that now. It's a little bit slow. Come on. But you can see there, it's two versions of it, because one of them was built using my Mac when I was at home to make it work. And then there's a version that will get updated shortly. And it didn't build for some reason. Let's give that another. Oh no, it did it. It's just, I'm being impatient. So it'll pop up in a moment with a little box to ask you to open the app. There you go. It says, please, nice of it to put it behind. It says, please launch the app, because they can't podge the screen. So I'm going to use my big fat finger and open it. You can see there that with reflector, which is what I'm using to reflect the screen. So this is my device in my hands. You can see there. Now I'm back into the same one. I can log in. It takes me into the app, and I'm back in using my iPhone and doing exactly the same thing. And just to prove the point, I can go out and just see the fact that it's now opening up the app on the iPhone and the maps using Apple Maps. And you can see in the top left corner up here, I've got the return to the app, and it takes you back into the app. So, and I've got the ad page, etc. So it's all there. And this is now using an iPhone. So you can see that I've proven the fact that I've built the app once, written the code once, and I'm running on Android, Windows, and iOS using a Windows machine and nothing else. So that's, for me, pretty darn impressive. You know, I like that a lot. So if we just hide this, and we'll come back to that later. So now, like I said, we want to actually use our, if I stop this, we want to use our cloud services and not the mock data service. So if we comment these out and bring in a dependency injection of a cloud data store and cloud auth service. So what we've got here is we've got some in our app, we've got some global variables at the top, which have got our client application, our auth result, and the current account, which is stored on the device. We call into our, as we build the app, a client app, and we set up the application builder, which sets up all the authentication for us. And then out in the auth service, which is our cloud auth service, when we sign in, we come in here, we check if there's a current account stored on the device. If not, we then go out and do an interactive call out to Azure AD, and it opens up the device browser, and then you sign into your Azure AD tenant with using the Microsoft tool in there, which you can skin and put your own logos and the likes on as well. And then hopefully you get back an auth result, which you then use to prove we can get into the app. So if we just send that, I'm not going to do it on the iOS, I'm going to go back to Android just because it's going to build a bit quicker. And we'll go out to build that for our Samsung device. While that's building, if we go out to our constants, we've got here the constants that are used. We've got a redirect URL, a URI, sorry, which is used by Azure AD to where it's going to redirect us once we've authenticated. We've got a client ID and tenant ID, which is the tenant, the Azure AD tenant and client ID. This iOS keychain security group is basically the app ID used by iOS keychains. So if you run this on iOS, it'll pop up with an extra box that says, you're about to call out to an auth service, and it's an extra thing that Apple to make sure it's extra secure. Then we've got our scope, which is the scope that Christos will talk about in a wee while, that we're going to call out, and then the actual URI that we're going to call out to do all this authentication. So we've got sort of 7 lines of code there. We've got our auth service, which is 50 lines of code, and most of that is white space, and there's not much else there. And then in our app at the beginning there, we've probably got another 10 lines of code. So not a lot, and most of this was cut and paste, believe it or not, from docs.microsoft.com. So and I've just filled in the blanks. But if we now go out to our phone, I can now log in, and this should now. It's actually, I need to log out, that's why. And then log in, because it had the one there before, and it's going to go out to login.microsoft.com. It's going to ask me, do I want to log in with my my account that this device has used before? Yes, I do. So I click that. You're trying to sign into a Xamarin app for Global Azure. Yes, I want to carry on with that. And all this is obviously you can skin. Now I'm logged in. And now I can go to the Volcanoes page. It's going to call out to Cosmos DB using secure and secretless stuff that Chris is going to go into in a minute. And now I've got a massive long list of extra volcanoes that I can look at, and we're going to look at this one in Vietnam. So I've not been to Vietnam before, and we'll just see where that is on the map, and we'll go out and just pull that in. So this is somewhere in Vietnam, just east of Ho Chi Minh. So yeah, you can see here, this is all working, and I've added next to no code. And now all I need to do to switch between when I'm, maybe sitting in the rest area on my aircraft and I want to play with the app, I can use the mock data service, or I can use the cloud data service, and just, commenting these in and out. Obviously, you could link that to whether you're doing a debug or release build, that sort of thing. But the rest of the code stays the same. Nothing else needs to change. That is pretty much all I'm going to talk about for the app. I'm not sure if there's any questions about that, but I'll go back to see if there's any from Shannon.
So far, so good. No questions there.
Excellent. Do you have any questions, Christos, before I move on, or do you like to show us how the back end works, how it all works?
I have a few questions. So the first question is: were you using Maui just now, or were you using just the old cell?
This is still Xamarin Forms 5.
With Shell, right?
With Shell, yes.
Yeah.
Maui.
It's in preview.
It's in preview 3, come out, I think last week, I think it was. That's pushed out. What they're doing at the moment, you can go get up and watch the team build it out. In fact, you can go and help them build it out. But at the moment, they've got things like labels and buttons and the likes. But the things like the collection view, that list that I was using, is not built out in Maui. So we couldn't technically build this app in Maui just yet. But I'm excited for, I think it's preview 4, which is a month or so away. We'll have those things. So it'd be awesome to see. And once it is out, I'm going to rebuild this app using Maui just to show it off a bit more.
And we'll make the code available on GitHub. So you should be able to follow along and then reach out to us if you actually want to run this application and see how it works. Obviously, you won't be able to sign into my tenant or the tenant that me and Cliff are using, but it's easy to just change those constants and make it work. The important bit here is that we can have multiple front ends. We can have a mobile app, we can have a web app, we can have a progressive web app, we could have a desktop client, all calling into the same backend API, all securely accessing the data. Now, in the past, you could have done a phone directly to Cosmos DB, right? So you could call directly to Cosmos DB from your phone. The challenge there would be that first you need to store the credentials on your phone. We can't have managed identities running on the phone, unfortunately. And secondly, anyone could reverse engineer the code because it's a public client. It can be trusted, and therefore they could get access to your private keys. And if you think that this is far-fetched, back in the early days of Philips Hue light bulbs, if anyone has ever done Philips Hue light bulbs that you can control with your phone, Philips injected or embedded their private key for their API into the firmware of those light bulbs. So some security researcher somewhere in the world reverse engineered the code, and with that information, he could control every light bulb out there in the world because he had access to the private key. So private keys or secrets or credentials can make it into your app, or they shouldn't make it into your app. I mean, they can make it. We don't want that to happen. So what we did is we went with an API first approach, where the front end needs to call to an API. And what Cliff was showing in his code was not just authenticating the user, but also requiring or requesting a scope that would be passed down to the API. And my API could be doing lots of things. There could be a read-only permission. So what Cliff is currently showing, and the API that I have exposed to him is only read-only. So the add and delete capabilities would not work because he wouldn't have the right scope. And in my API, what I did, let's switch quickly to, let's change gears and show some code, right? Let's do this. Why not? Let's show some code. So Cliff was running against the published API, and what I didn't tell Cliff, just to make some fun, I forgot to push the latest changes last night. So I was pushing them while he was actually doing his demo, and I was like, oh my God, please let things work. That's my confidence in my code without you. So you're running the latest
live,
which was deployed literally like let's see, your terminal, will it show what happened output? Yeah, it was deployed at 777. So I'm not lying, it was just deployed while he was doing his demo. Right, cutting in close. So in my API, what I did is two things. One is I am checking for incoming tokens. So Cliff needs to acquire an access token from Azure AD. That token needs to be valid. And then here, with a single line of code, I can say I want to turn Azure Active Directory authentication. So we use one line of code to turn our API into a secure API. This will validate the fact that line 24 is the one that does the magic. It says, you know what? Any incoming call as it goes to the pipeline needs to have a valid access token. And once that passes and goes into my controller, then in here, you notice I have authorized at the very top, line 10. And then at line 16, I'm expecting, this is where I define the expected scope. And this is accessing Cosmos data, just read-only permissions for now. And then in my call, in my controller endpoint, in my action, the first thing I do at line 21, check this out. I'm using a single line of code to make sure that the token has the right scope. That is very important. Not just a valid token presented to the API, but also that the token has the valid scope. So in this case, it's a read-only. And then as long as I have the right scope, or as long as the incoming call request has the right scope, that's at that point, I will allow the code to continue execution. Otherwise, this will throw a 403 and say, I'm sorry, you're authenticated, but you don't have the right permissions. So you're not authorized to do that. As you can see, very little code to get the authentication working. And that's the secure connection between the front end and the back end. Now, let's move on to the funny stuff, like the interesting bits here. We did say that we want to have secretless connections to our Cosmos DB. So here I have a service called data service, and my data service is here. And this one actually goes and speaks to Cosmos DB. There are two things that we need to do when we want to use Cosmos DB managed identities. This actually went to GA maybe a couple of weeks ago. So we announced the support for RBAC, which was extremely exciting because up until this point, the only way to connect to Cosmos was via a Cosmos key. You had to have your secrets. And a lot of people said, well, we don't want to rely on secrets. For the same reason I've been talking about secrets all this time, and people wanted to do Azure AD authentication. So the team added support. The latest libraries also support this, and I think it's a preview. It's Cosmos Preview 3.18.0 preview. It's not the 4.x preview libraries. So do not go to the 4x libraries for Cosmos, because that will not support managed identities. So, so Cosmos now supports managed identities or Azure Active Directory authentication, but there's also another component there that we need to provide some RBAC permissions, the resource-based access control. So not only does it support authentication, but we also need to say what kind of roles or permissions does an account have. So if I jump into my Cosmos here, not Cosmos, if I jump into, I had a nice document. In this document, if you search for Cosmos DB RBAC, you'll see that now we can define custom roles. And I went and defined a custom role, which is a read-only custom role for my Cosmos. And I want to prevent changes, right? So I don't want people to go and write stuff. Cliffs app does not have permission to add volcanoes in my awesome database. So with that, I created an RBAC and I set it via the CLI. So you create a custom role. In this case, we say, we want to have a read-only permission, and then we add it. And there's a new CLI update. There's a new Cosmos DB extension for the CLI or PowerShell that you need to install that supports this RBAC permission. And with that, with RBAC, we can configure and set up the permissions. So the identities that we use in my API, both on my local machine and the production, have that specific role. So they can't do any changes because I don't want my API to go and change the data. I want a read-only access. So in my code, let's see how that is achieved, right? So once I have my identity secured in my in my Cosmos, then I need to use that identity in my services. So as you can see here, the magic happens in line 13 to 17. We are creating a new token credential. This is the credentials that we're gonna pass on to the Cosmos DB client. And in here, I say, well, you can have multiple approaches here. You can actually use the default token credential, which will just go and try every permutation of credentials you can find. Environment variables, your local machine, your Visual Studio account, your Visual Studio Code account, the Azure CLI, and managed identity. So it goes sequentially and tries these. But I want to be very explicit. I want to say, do not pick up any credentials other than the Azure CLI on my local machine. So whichever account is signed into my Azure CLI will provide the credentials to my locally running solution. And then managed identity client credential. So when I move to the cloud, there's no Azure CLI in my cloud web app or API. So it's going to use the managed identity that is configured in my API to actually connect to my Cosmos DB. And then here you see that's the endpoint for my Cosmos. And when I instantiate my Cosmos client, check this out. New Cosmos client endpoint, my instance of Cosmos, and then the credentials. And that's all I have to do. There are no secrets, there are no keys, and it will just go and do it. It will find the credentials, and as long as I have configured the permissions correctly for RBAC, it will just do it, which is amazing. And down here, you can see, like I say, get my volcanoes. So I go through get database, I get the container, and then I do a query. We could change the query to say, go and get me a specific volcano. So I want to be to optimize for that. Again, there's no difference here. Once we instantiate the Cosmos client, there are no secrets. So where we're going, we don't need secrets. And locally, it runs like that. Let's see what happens when I deploy to production, which I did while Clifford was running his demos. If you don't live dangerously, there's no point, right? So in my web app or API, and so managed identities are underpinned by Microsoft Identity. They're part of the service accounts that we create behind the scenes. So when you deploy a service to like a web app or an Azure function, it will provide you with an identity. And there are two types of identities. There's a system assigned one. That's an identity that is assigned to the resource. And then there is a user assigned one. So I could go and create my own service principal. I could create my own identity and assign it to this web app. In fact, I could have multiple identities assigned to this web app. And then depending on what I want to do, I could have one that instantiates a read-only Cosmos client, and then I could have another identity that instantiates a read-write client for Cosmos. So different APIs, different API endpoints could use different client instantiations, again, without any secrets. If you follow the system assigned one, which is automatically assigned to your resource, be aware that if you delete the resource, then you are going to actually delete the identity as well. So you have to do it all over again if you redeploy. There is a question, can I use VS Code to make emulators? That is slightly unrelated to this topic, but yes, you can. I suspect, you can write anything you want. I don't know what kind of emulators you want to build.
They're talking about the emulators for
Xamarin.
For Xamarin.
Yes.
With Maui, they're moving across to enable that, but it's not going to be as good as using Visual Studio. And at the end of the day, Visual Studio is free. You can get the community edition and it all just works.
It works.
So
yes.
yeah, you can run the emulators. You can download the emulators, the Android emulators, but you won't get hot restart, which is part of for using the
Visual
iOS.
Studio. Yeah.
Because it needs Visual Studio to work.
Yes.
There's some magic in there that's Mehdi Leger and the team across in Boston have put together, which is, I don't know how it works, but it's pure magic.
Yes.
But yeah. So sadly, if you want them, you got to use full Visual Studio.
Yeah. I mean, there are pros and cons with using different tools, but I think for .NET and for Xamarin development or Maui development, Visual Studio is a stellar IDE, and you get all these goodness for free. And thanks for asking this question, Emmanuel.
Yep.
I hope this answered your question here. Now, going back to Managed Identities, the front end or my API has a Managed Identity assigned to it. But remember, we have to go and configure Cosmos to say that specific object ID, that specific identity needs to have the right permissions to go and call the Cosmos DB. So that relationship is not one-sided. You need to create trust between the API, the web app, the Azure function to the backend resource. Both need to know what the identity can do. And once you configure that, then you can run your API, and it will automatically pick up the Managed Identity in the cloud and run with secretless stuff. The other thing I did over there, which was like an icing on the cake, is I also use Key Vault. And I use Key Vault for two things, which is pretty cool if you haven't used that one. Again, using the availability of ASP.NET middleware and the capabilities of injecting Key Vault, you can actually remove secrets from your app settings. It's very common, right? So you might have some kind of an API key that you cannot remove from your code because you need to have it available at runtime. So here I have some config value somewhere, right? And then I have my Key Vault URI. So what I can do is in my program, when my application bootstraps, I can actually bootstrap my Key Vault and say, find any properties in Key Vault that exist and match in name to my app settings, and then populate those values during startup. By the way, if you screw this up, then your application will fail to start up because you won't be able to either connect to Key Vault or it won't find the secrets. So you might have an issue there. So I think Julie Lerman was trying to follow this example and said, oh, well, in that case, I don't need this one. I will just remove it. And then it just failed. So this one allows you to populate config values from Key Vault at startup, which is fantastic. It means that you can keep secrets that you need to use in your application and only pull them on runtime. There's nothing checked into code. And you can take it a step further as well and say, not only that, but I want to also pull secrets at runtime. So here again, we're following the same example of instantiating a credential, then passing it into my Key Vault client, and then from there, grabbing my secret. And you'll see that this one is coming from the configuration, which has already been populated, but this is pulled at runtime. And that means that you can call secrets at runtime using that passwordless or secretless approach and still have secrets that are valuable or necessary to your application, but outside your code. So there are lots of ways to protect against storing secrets in your code. If you're not using Azure resources that support managed identities, because we're trying to make it available to as many resources. You can do SQL, you can do Cosmos, you can do storage, you can do Event Grid. There are lots of services that support managed identity, but at some point you might hit a point that a third-party API that you need to call, a third-party resource that you need to call is not supported by managed identities. In that case, Key Vault becomes your best friend. And it's probably one of my second or top three best services out there. Identity comes first, Key Vault second, storage third. You can do so many things with these three tools. It's amazing. Now, you might ask, well, everything is nice and dandy, but Chris and Cliff, you said that you don't have to run on the Microsoft platform, right? You said we support everyone. We support AWS and DigitalOcean, and we support people running on Kubernetes, and we support people running on bare metal. How can we support these people to be successful and still do secretless stuff? Well, my friends,
Christos,
Yes.
before you go there though, Shannon's got a question, just in case it's relevant to what you were just talking about. So
yeah, go for it. Shannon, let us know what the question is.
Oh, it was already asked. It was from Emmanuel. You guys have already
right, okay, fair enough. Sorry,
we're on the ball, man. We're absolutely
we're ahead of the game.
Yes, but we are at the end here. So if anyone has any questions they would like to ask, please ask away in the chat.
I think we got 10 minutes left, haven't we, Christos? So you can quickly do your AWS or wherever you're going with your talk there.
We do. So I was going to say that the highlight of the day is Azure Arc. With Azure Arc, you can onboard any device anywhere onto Azure and make Azure think that this is actually an Azure resource, right? So let's say I have a VM running on my closet in my own data center. I have my own CMATSCAS data center if you want to rent compute. So in there, I can actually deploy an Azure Arc agent, which is super easy. You just need to go, where's the documentation? You can actually, no, I didn't want to go to the whole Azure documentation. I want to go into, there's no documentation here? Damn, okay. Product overview, maybe here. No, it's weird, okay. It supports anyone, Windows, Linux, Kubernetes, and Azure Services. So let's say I have my server running on my closet. I can actually deploy Azure Arc. And in that case, you might say, well, what's the point of doing that? The whole point is that Azure Arc gives you a managed identity. And that means that with that managed identity and the support of Azure SDKs, it wasn't fully supported to begin with because it has a kind of a different process, different endpoints and what have you. That's how it works behind the scenes. Azure Identity will call into an endpoint, will grab a token for you and present it to your app. This process is now fully supported. So anything that is Azure Arc onboarded can actually have a managed identity, and therefore you can use the code I showed you and run it anywhere. Even Kubernetes now, it says up here, we support Azure Kubernetes, or Arc-enabled Kubernetes now has Azure Arc support. And therefore, you don't have to run on Azure. You can run anywhere and you still get managed identities and you can still call your resources securely. And if your resources are not running on Azure, you can still benefit from Key Vault. So you can say, I want my Azure Arc device or server to go to call into Key Vault, as I showed you in a bit, like before, and then get my secrets and call my other APIs. So you can run anywhere and you still benefit from secretless solutions. And I think it's a fantastic proposition there. Now, we talked about secretless and this whole other element of secure DevOps. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to show you all that, but think about you're running your app now, you need to deploy somewhere, you have some infrastructure as code, you have some deployment scripts that sometimes need secrets, right? If you're deploying a SQL server, for example, you need to pass a username and a password. You can also use managed identities or no managed identities. You can use Microsoft Identity plus Key Vault to populate these on the fly and make it work. I've done demos with Pulumi. I've done demos with Bicep. If you haven't used Bicep, it's fantastic. All the tools out there can support embedding secrets at runtime, so you don't have to compromise your security. If you're interested in these things, make sure to reach out to us. I'm going to switch to my slides for one more time, just to plug what we talked today, do a quick recap. Maybe Cliff, do a quick recap, and then I will close with my last slide.
Yeah, so all this will be up on GitHub, so you can download the app, you can download Christos's his web API and play with it yourself. Obviously, you need to stand up your own Azure AD for that to work. The good news is it's free, or there's a free element of it. You get, is it 50,000 monthly active users, is it, or is that B2C? I'm remembering that.
Right, so B2C, if you're using B2C, which would all be possible as well today, what we showed is Azure AD, which is the organizational kind of identity. So Clifford had to have an account in my tenant to be able to sign in, but you could also equally easily use B2C. So instead of calling to Azure AD to get tokens and authenticate, you can call to B2C, which is the consumer facing approach. And that means that you can bring your Gmail, you can bring your own email, or you can do social media logins, right? And B2C gives you 50,000 accounts per month for free. So you can do 50,000 users, unlimited sign-ins and sign-outs and whatever for the month. If you want to do Azure AD, there's the Microsoft 365 developer program where you can actually go and spin up your own full-blown Azure AD test environment with a P2 license, so you get all the capabilities, conditional access, multi-factor authentication, and that allows you to play around with an Azure AD. Now, that Azure AD will not be tethered to a subscription on Azure. So if you want to say, I want to use that to directly call into my Azure resources with my identities, then you can do that. However, if you already have an Azure subscription, you already have an Azure AD tenant, and it is available to you to use. So if you're doing stuff on Azure, you already have an Azure AD tenant. Back to you.
Yep. So as I say, you can go out and grab the code from GitHub. We'll make those available afterwards, and you can download the app, run it on your devices. Obviously, you need to just change the bit in that constants file that we had earlier, just to make sure you've got your tenant and client ID in there, and then set up the back end that Christos has got as well. So if you're a .NET developer, then Xamarin's the place to be. Write it once and it runs everywhere. And then obviously your .NET skills can go across to writing the web API that Christos has showed off. And then obviously I've learned a lot from Christos and others that have run the 425 show in recent months. So obviously go out and watch that as well on YouTube. It's great to catch up, and you can go out there and watch the bit that works for you. So if you're kind of a Python developer, or you're into Node, then go and watch the bit that works for you. I think there's a 2-hour one that you did for doing Xamarin and pulling that in, which was some months ago. So it's prior to this keyless version, so you had to hide the keys in places and stuff like that. So
I did.
This is much better, because previously on my apps I'd use a tool called Mobile Build Tools, which would hide the keys and bring them in. But now I don't need to. I just do it this way, and it's all done for me, which is awesome.
There you go.
So, yeah.
A few lines of code and you're off to a good start. So as you saw, it doesn't take a lot to write secure apps, right? It's 30 lines of code in your Xamarin app to authenticate and get your tokens, and then 5 lines of code in my API to do everything securely. In fact, if I didn't have to call into Cosmos, it was just 2 lines of code, which is insane. Okay, and 5 configuration settings. I love it. But that's it. Like it doesn't take much. So please reach out to us if you have questions about NT. Reach out to Cliff if you have Xamarin questions, because he's amazing. He put this awesome demo. And I said, do not spend any time on the UI, because we don't have enough time. Just make it work. And it's like he spent an insane amount of effort doing this awesome UI where you can check for volcanoes and what have you. All the data is free, by the way, so I can put a blog post to show you how to put everything end to end. But we appreciate you coming to our session. Hopefully you learned a few things, and stay tuned for the rest of the day, because it's going to be fantastic back-to-back speakers and sessions. And I want to thank Cliff for making it work with me, flying around and still making time to deliver this.
That was awesome. No, thanks for inviting me along. And any questions about Xamarin, then reach out to me on Twitter, and or reach out to the Xamarin team as well. They're very active on Twitter as well. Or there's a Discord channel as well where you can ask you questions for the Xamarin team as well.
You guys have a Discord? Nice.
Xamarin team do, yeah. It's a very active Discord channel. So if you get stuck, pop over there and ask your questions.
There you go. I love the active communities on Discord. So we have a Discord for the 4-5 show. The Xamarin team has a Discord so by saying 4-5, so I mean the identity show, right? And then Xamarin, I don't know if the .NET team has a Discord. Do you know?
They do. Yeah, they do.
There you go. Yeah. Everyone on Discord.
Everyone's on Discord.
I heard a joke that Slack is Discord for the boomers or something like that. Where back 10 years ago it was Slack, and now it's all Discord. Man, I feel old now.
Yeah, I'm feeling old. Yeah, my kid's getting big. So but they see me using Discord the other day. I was like, "You use Discord, Dad?" I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah, you're so hip, Dad.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if I don't think there's any more questions. I think Shannon's mentioned there's no more questions, but we've got a couple of minutes left if there is a quick one. If not, I think we're done for today. We can relax for a cup of tea and go back to being happy in the fact that all our apps are secure.
Exactly.
Yes, no further questions. Just folks are saying thank you for the great session.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, everyone. stay tuned. Lots of awesome sessions for the rest of the day. Fantastic speakers. Present company excluded. I'm talking about myself. Clifford was awesome. So so thanks everyone. Again, we hope we learned a few important lessons today about security and how to write apps better.
Yeah. Likewise. Thanks a lot, everyone, and see you again soon. Stick around and watch the rest of the shows.
Yep.